वागर्थाविव सम्पृक्तौ वागर्थप्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ।
सर्वेभ्योऽपि नमस्काराः। IIT Madras संस्थायाः संस्कृतसमितेः आश्रये कुमारसम्भवम् अधिकृत्य प्रवचनानि प्रचाल्यमानानि सन्ति। तत्र कुमारसम्भवे पञ्चमसर्गे स्मः। We are doing श्लोका number 39. We had just finished. प्रयुक्तसत्कारविशेषमात्मना नमां परं सम्प्रतिपत्तुमर्हसि यतस्सतां सन्नतगात्रिसङ्गतं मनीषिभिः सप्तपदीनमुच्यते. In this verse, the Brahmacharin was saying that she is not to treat him as someone different, so someone who is alien, so someone who is a stranger. Namam param sampratipattum arhasi. You do well, please not to consider me as an outsider. Consider me as an insider and as one of your own, as a good friend. So, and that is because Parvati has offered him a Vishesha Satkara, an hospitality which is unusual, so which is more than what is common. And such kind of hospitality is rendered only to people who are very close and intimate, or people who are highly respectable and so on. And therefore, you do not have to treat me as an outsider. Now, we can see that step by step the Brahmacharin gains Parvati's confidence, and is ultimately his endeavor is directed towards almost getting into the personal questions of Parvati's personality and her tapas and so on. And the plausible reason that he gives is that friendship amongst the wise is something that doesn't take too long. On the other hand, it happens pretty early. So walk 7 steps together and friendship is secure with the noble, among the noble. And alternatively, speak 7 words with the new person who is a noble person, and friendship is struck. That way, so we are already friends, as it were, he is trying to say. Therefore, satam sangatam, the friendship amongst the wise and the noble, is saptapadinam, is one that happens with but 7 words or 7 steps, and here they have spoken quite a few words, so even more than 7. And this is not a statement that sangatam is saptapadinam, is not something that is made by the Brahmacharin himself, but on the other hand, it is something that wise men say. So, manishibhihi, by men of intelligence, so men of wisdom, so uchyate, it is they that say. Having said that, he says, atotra kinchit bhavatim bahukshamam dvijati bhavad upapanna chapalaha ayanjanah prashtumanastapodhane nached rahasyam pratibhaktumarhasi. You can see that Kalidasa employs the self-same techniques even in his Raghumsha, where there is a conversation between Dilipa and the lion. So, by proceeding on grounds of friendship, he is able to secure entry into the private person of Parvati here. Ataha, therefore, atra bhavatim kinchit prashtumanaha. So I am here to ask you some question. It's a small thing after all. Kinchit prashtumanaha. I would like to ask you some small thing. And for this he prepares the background very well. So he says that Parvati can be questioned because of various qualifications on her part, and he can ask the questions because of various qualifications on his own part. So it all comes now very well justified. Why? How is Parvati? Bhavatim. So the word Bhavati shows a regard and respect that a person has for the other. Bahukshama, you have a lot of patience. So how does the brahmachari know that Parvati has a lot of patience? Obviously, the way that she is conducting her tapas is itself is an indication of the way that she is pursuing tapas with great patience. So it's not possible for a person to pursue in something serious for too long if the person does not have patience. So one can have a lot of enjoyment in doing things which are enjoyable, and that does not demand great patience. But in order to do tapas, it's not an easy thing, and results are not going to come forth easily. In most of the enterprises that we take up, we know approximately when we can expect some result, and here is a situation where you cannot predict when is tapas going to fructify and when will the fruits be available, and one has to just wait patiently and keep on pursuing. So in spite of the very indefinite possibilities and indefinite results, and therefore you have a lot of patience, Bahukshamam. And I am asking this question as a Brahmana, Dvijati Bhavat. Dvijati means one who is born twice. So Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are all known as Dvijatis, because the word Jati means primarily birth, from root Jana, to be born. So Janana, Jani, Janus, Jati, all these words are all from root Jan. You can see that the same word is available in Greek and Latin also. Genesis also means, see, taking birth or creation and so on. And therefore we have words like genetic and many other, generation and so on. So many words are all from root Jana only. So Mathur Yadagre Jayante Dvitiyam Maunjivandhanam says Smriti. So the first birth is from the womb of the mother, and the second from the Maunjivandhana or the Upanayana. Brahmana Kshatriya Vishastasma Dete Dvija Smrta. Therefore Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya are all known as Dvijas, those who are born twice. And even though it is applicable to Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, it is very commonly applied to Brahmanas. And therefore here I am a Brahmana. Dvijati Bhavat Upapanna Chapalaha means I have got some curiosity, and being a Brahmin, it is after all justifiable. What does this mean? How can a Brahmana can have curiosity or frivolity in this way? He is expected to be more dignified and more responsible in his behavior. The point is that the question he is going to put is not something personal, not at the outset at least. So it is only gradually that he leads to the personal questions, but at the outset he asks questions which are apparently only quite relevant and very natural. What is the question about? That is regarding her own tapas, and therefore for a Brahmana to get to know about tapas is quite sensible, and therefore Dvijati Bhava Upapanna Chapalaha. Upapanna means logical, justified. So I have some curiosity, an irrepressible curiosity by virtue of being a Brahmana, and Ayam Janaha means this fellow. So in Sanskrit, referring to one's own self as this person is also a way of endearing oneself to the other and also showing humility. And therefore, this fellow is interested in asking some questions. Tapodhane, and he is reminding her that he is Bahukshama by using a significant epithet, namely Tapodhana. Parvati has tapas as her riches. Being a princess, she inherits naturally a great deal of riches from her father. So she is to be considered as a princess, and therefore one hailing from a royal family is a natural heir or heiress to immense riches. But here in this case, Parvati has eschewed all that enjoyment of luxury and wealth, and setting aside all that affluence, she is now considering only tapas as her opulence. Tapaha eva dhanam yasyaha. So tapodhane, O lady whose assets are but tapas, nachedrahasyam pratibhaktum arhasi. And he also puts one more clause. If it is not a secret, if it is not private, you may please reply, you may please respond. Rahasyam nachet, if it is not a matter of something private, you may respond. Pratibhaktum arhasi. Now, whenever you want to delve into something private of a person, if you introduce this clause, it is more helpful. So, I am not forcing you to answer this question. So, if you consider it as very personal, please don't answer. So, otherwise, you are free to answer. You are welcome to answer, but it's not binding on you to answer. It's not obligatory. So, when you make that statement, that very clause helps the situation by persuading the person being addressed indirectly to respond to the question. And therefore he says, I'm not pressing you. So if you feel like answering, you may answer. So not otherwise. And he says, you are a tapodana, but what exactly is the purpose of your tapas? He says, there are at least 4 reasons for which you are not to do tapas. Kule prasuti prathamasya vedhasaha. We are doing shloka number 41. Triloka saundarya mevoditam vupuhu. Amrugya maishwarya sukham navam vayaha. Tapah phalapsyat kimatah paramoda. You are born in a noble family. Kule prasuti. Most people, when they are not born into a great family, they are naturally deprived of very many benefits and considerations and so on. And therefore, they would love to be born in a great family. And in fact, it often happens that when we meet friends and listen to their stories, and if they are lucky enough, we sometimes wish and love to be born in such an environment where the atmosphere is very friendly compared to our zone, which we naturally curse sometimes. So, in this case, Parvati is herself born in a very great family. How is it great? Prathamasya vedhasaha kule prasuti. You are born in the family of the first Hiranyagarbha. So, and it is said that Himavan was created by Brahma for a very special purpose. Yajnangartham maya srishtaha himavan achaleshwaraha, says Hiranyagarbha. So it is for being an important part of yajna that Himavan has been created. And therefore the presence of yajnik items in the Himalayan regions has been extolled. So by Kalidasa himself in the opening canto. And therefore you are born in a very great family. Can one think of a family much greater than this family? So you are born in the family of Himavan, the king of mountains, the son of Meru, and so on. And therefore, regarding your birth in a noble family, you don't have to perform any tapas and dream of being born in a bigger or greater family. And therefore, kule prasutihi prathamasya vedhasaha. Vedas is Brahma. And sometimes when a person is born, say, somewhat ugly, one aspires for a charming personality. So it so happens that everywhere persons who are handsome or beautiful are given some preference. Psychologists have studied and found out that oftentimes teachers unconsciously give more marks to students who are more attractive. Judges are unconsciously more lenient towards the parties, so which show more confidence or greater beauty and so on, or more handsome and so on. And therefore there is an unconscious bias that is working towards people who have a natural endowment of beauty. And in the case of Parvati, it is not an ordinary beauty. The beauty of Parvati has been described in the earlier cantos in sufficient detail. In the opening canto and in the third canto, we saw wonderful descriptions of Parvati's physique. And here he says, it is as though the beauty of all the three worlds put together, that is Parvati. Triloka Saundaryam, the beauty of the three worlds. If the essence of all that is brought together and made into one form, so if that is made flesh, so if that is embodied, that becomes Parvati. Triloka Saundaryam Uditam means arisen. So such is your frame, Taba Upuhu. So your frame is such as is the embodiment of the charm of the Trinity of worlds. The third one is Aishwarya Sukham, the joy and happiness arising out of a very comfortable life full of riches. So, and that is not to be sought after. Amrugyam means one that is to be searched for, so eagerly sought after and so on. So Aishwarya also means lordship. So even that is there, all at the feet of Parvati. Amrugyam Aishwarya Sukham Navam Vayaha. And she is in the prime of her youth. So she has just stepped into her youth. So Navam Vayaha. And Tapah Phalam Syat Kimatah Param Vada. So what else can be the fruit of tapas, Tapah Phalam? In fact, this canto itself is named as Tapah Phalodaya by Milinatha. And that's why he is asking this question. He is in fact the fruit of tapas. So as Kalidasa has described himself, Swayam Vidhata Tapasah Phalanam Kenapi Kamena Tapaschakara. So in the context of Shiva performing tapas, Kalidasa says that he is himself the distributor of the fruits of tapas, and he is himself now absorbed in tapas. And thus he is the very embodiment of the tapas of Parvati, and therefore he has now come disguised to give a surprise test to Parvati. And as they say, the darkest hour is just before the dawn, and therefore this brahmacharin has appeared before Parvati, and he is now going to virtually grill her with very tough questions that cannot be answered easily. And therefore, where a person has nothing but emotional attachment towards an ideal and a goal, then the person can falter, and it may not be possible for the person to face a battery of questions. It's only when a person is well intellectually grounded that he can handle questions and face the questions and give the appropriate answers, befitting answers, justifying solutions to the problems raised. And therefore the brahmacharin has come and has been asking questions, and he says, Tapah phalam syat kimatah param vada. So what else can be the fruit of tapas? Please tell me. So atah param means beyond this. So beyond being born in a noble family, beyond the extraordinary beauty and charm that Parvati is, and the unrivaled affluence that Parvati is virtually rolling and lying in, and what else can be the fruit of tapas? And she is after all still very young, so even if she did not have one or more of these, there is scope to earn them, so being so young as yet. And therefore what is there that you ought to seek through your tapas to earn? Tapah phalam syat kimatah param vada.
कुले प्रसूतिः प्रथमस्य वेधसः त्रिलोकसौन्दर्यमिवादितं वपुः अमृग्यमैश्वर्यसुखं नवं वयः प्रथमस्य वेधसः कुले प्रसूतिः त्रिलोकसौन्दर्यमिवादितं वपुः ऐश्वर्यसुखम् अमृग्यं नवं वयः तपः फलं स्यात् किमतः परं वद तपः फलं स्यात् किमतः परं वद.
Now, after making inquiries about all the positive things that a person can be doing tapas for, the brahmachari now raises issues which are negative in character and in order to avoid which one performs tapas. So he says, Bhavatyanishtādapi nama dussahan manasvininam pratipatti idrishi vichara marga prahitena chetasa nadrishyate taccha talodalittvai or kushodalittvai. He says, well, in the case of situations where dussahat anishtat, on account of some unbearable calamity, dussaha means what cannot be borne with, so difficult to endure. So unendurable calamities, anishtat, idrishi pratipattihi bhavati. Now such an enterprise can commence. So such engagements can happen. Idrishi pratipattihi bhavati. And this happens in the case of persons who are very dignified. So manasvininam. So for brave ladies, so this can happen because they cannot put up with certain situations, so certain embarrassments or difficulties and so on. So in the case of Dakshayani, actually that is none but Parvati herself in her earlier birth. So she finds that even though Shiva loves her so very much, so she thought that she must perform tapas. So she casts her body away. So in the yogic fire, sati yoga visrishta deha, says Kalidasa. So that was because she was so humiliated by her own father that she thought that this birth, so where I have had to encounter this kind of an embarrassment and humiliation is not worth living, and therefore I must take a new birth wherein I will not be humiliated, and therefore she went to perform tapas and so on, and through the yogic fire she reduced her body to ashes. And in the case of say Sita also, she says when she comes to know that she has been abandoned by Rama, so when Lakshmana tells her, breaks the news that she has had to be abandoned and deserted in the forest and she cannot come back to the palace and live with Rama again. So she says, after an initial burst of emotions, she says, well, henceforth after the giving birth to the children, I will perform tapas, and with my eyes, my gaze fixed towards the sun. Saham tapas surya nivishta drishtihi urdham prasute schiritum yatishye. So bhuyo yathame jananantarepi tameva bharta na chai prayogaha. So that the fruit of that tapas should be that you alone be my husband again. So she is not cursing Rama. On the other hand, she hankers after Rama's company. She is only missing Rama so too very much. So, but in the next birth, the situation should be that I will no more be separated from you. Nacha viprayogaha. So she has had a long period of separation earlier also. So, and here is a permanent separation from Rama now. And such situations should not ensue in my future birth. So that should be the goal and aim of my tapas then. And therefore, for brave ladies, they cannot bear with humiliation and they would rather end their life through tapas rather than allow themselves to be subject to such kinds of humiliations. And therefore, Kalidasa, the Brahmacharin says here, well, that happens with certain kinds of women. But I cannot see any such situation. Vichara marga prahitena chetasa nadrishyate taccha krishodaritvai. So I cannot see that happen, O fair lady, in your case. Vichara marga prahitena chetasa, when I set myself to thinking about it. So if I speculate, I find no such situation for this. Now, how does he say that Parvati cannot meet with situations where there is some kind of embarrassment? So, to Parvati from some source, so from any source. How is he sure? The next shlokas clarify the same situation. You must note that the Brahmacharan is a gallant youth. So almost every verse he gives compliment to Parvati, so to her physique or her beauty in almost every verse. So in this verse he is referring to her udara, her abdomen, so not being protruding. So she is referred to as Krishodari or Talodari. So one who has a flat abdomen, so one who is very charming. So as it is Shiva himself who has come in the guise of Brahmacharan and is about to marry you too, so he takes that freedom. So when a person gives us some compliments, we somehow consciously or unconsciously we tend to be more responsive to the words of a person who is showing some admiration now and then, and that's what the Brahmacharan is doing now, and therefore that makes him more endearing person, and the compliments cannot be rejected, and there is truth in what he is saying. It's not some flattery. So on the other hand, it's a matter of fact that the Brahmachari is referring to. So in the next verse, shloka 43, he says, there can be no situation of humiliation for you from anyone at home or from anybody else. Alabhya shoko abhibhaveya makritihi vimanana subhru kutah piturugrihe parabhimarsho natavasti kahkaram prasarayet panagaratna suchaye. He says, this figure of yours, iyam akritihi. Akriti is figure. Alabhya shoka abhibhava. Shoka is sorrow. So there can be no source of sorrow for you. So shoka is alabhya for you. It's not just shoka. So some sort of sorrow can happen to anybody, so big or small and so on. But such sorrow as is very overpowering, as is overwhelming. So shoka abhibhava. Abhibhava is something that is very powerful and overwhelming. Alabhya shoka abhibhaveyam akriti. So this figure of yours is not something that is susceptible to or open to some kind of overpowering on account of an immensity of sorrow that just cannot be borne with. Alabhya shoka abhibhava iyam akriti. There is also a connection between a good form and good character and a good enjoyment in life. So these are certain strong beliefs, and therefore the kind of figure that Parvati is, one can easily see that she has not been subject to humiliation. So we can see, for example, sometimes by the very look of a person from a royal family, so they emanate such radiance that you can see that the person has all along been very well taken care of and lovingly treated by the kith and kin and others, and respected and so on, and therefore obviously Parvati's own figure radiates that confidence in beauty and charm that shows that she has never been subject to overwhelming tragedies and sorrows and so on. And secondly, he traces the source for this. This should happen if somebody should humiliate Parvati, it should be someone from her own family or someone outside. The second line treats the second issue, this issue, and the next line, third line, the other. Vimanana kubhru sutaha subhru kutaha piturgrihe. In your father's house, piturgrihe, vimanana kutaha, where can there be an embarrassment? Vimanana is looking down upon a person. So where can there be any kind of contempt in your father's home? So your father is a king of mountains, and that being the case, there cannot be any question of somebody embarrassing her and making her feel so bad and so sad that she feels like quitting her home and takes recourse to tapas. So Subhru Vimanana Pitrugrihe Kutaha. Subhru also refers once again, gives a compliment to Parvati's person. So a lady with charming eyebrows is Subhru. You can see that The Sanskrit word bhru itself is the origin of the English word bro. So subhru. So, O lady with charming eyebrows, piturgrihe vimanana kutaha. Where can there be any kind of humiliation for you in your father's home? And thirdly, parabhimarsho natavasti. There is no question whatsoever of somebody else outside one's own home, outside the kith and kin, of causing some embarrassment for you. So none dares touch you. So para abhimarsha is touching. Touching a person, especially a lady, without her permission. So that is abhimarsha. And therefore there can be no such kind of a trespass so upon your person. So parabhimarsho natavasti. Why? He answers this question and gives the justification through a beautiful analogy. Kahkaram prasarayet. Who can stretch his hand for Pannagaratna Suchaye? So Pannagaratna Sutaye or Suchaye, both readings are there. So for the gem on the hood of a serpent, Pannaga is a serpent, Ratna is the gem is on its hood. So Suchi is the bright ray emanating from it. And who can stretch his hand to, of course, everyone would love to stretch one's hands and get at a great gem. And in this case, Parvati is herself represented as a gem on the hood of a serpent. So the royal family that she hails from, so with all the guards and security that it provides and so on, and the kind of punishment that immediately entails following any indecent utterance or look at Parvati is assured, and therefore she is verily a Pannagaratna, and therefore Pannagaratna Suchaye, for the bright ray emanating from it, who stretches hand. Now, what is this Pannagaratna? We often come across the expression Nagamani and so on, which is very bright and so on. Our Puranic stories are full of such instances, and nobody exactly knows what it is. This appears to be purely mythical, and the explanation was given by my Acharya, so who said that it is also actually a portion of a bone on the hood of a serpent, which is seen very rarely though, so which is quite bright and therefore looks like a gem. And anyhow, in the case of Parvati, she is really like, she is a gem among women. So elsewhere, Malinatha says, Jato yadutkrishtam tad ratnam abhidhiyate. So in every class, Jati, the best is called a Ratna. Jato yadutkrishtam tad ratnam abhidhiyate. And therefore, she is really a Ratna, and therefore, this is not an ordinary Ratna, it is a Ratna on the hood of a serpent, which can be very fierce and ferocious and utterly impatient and so on. And once it strikes, one cannot survive at all. And therefore she can feel so secure there in her father's place, and in no way can she be offended by anyone. And when such a possibility is totally ruled out, there can be no possibility of any kind of dussaha anishta or vimanana or parabhimarsha. So these things are simply ruled out, and therefore what indeed can be the goal of your tapas? So can you please tell me? And he also asks one question, which also once again looks very natural. He says, who on earth would take to this kind of tapas in prime of youth? Kimityapasya bharanani yauvane dhritam taya vardhakashobhi valkalam nahi pradoshe or vada pradoshe sputachandra taraka vibhavari dirunaya kalpate. So Kalidasa she conveys his arguments only through examples. Very beautiful illustrations he gives. So in your youth, you have abandoned all your ornaments. Abharanani apasya, setting aside all your abharanas. in your Yauvana. Oh, what for? Kimiti. Dhritantvaya Vardhaka Shobhi Valkalam. You have put on bark garments, so Valkalam. So which befits only old age. Vardhaka Shobhi. So it's only natural that a person who wants to take up tapas, that he should assume the bark garments because that's what is most convenient and most helpful for tapasvins, and the tapasvins also love a life of simplicity, and nothing can be simpler than the Valkala, the garment made of the bark. So what befits old age has been worn by you at a young age. One can say Abharana Shobhi Yovanam. So youth, she looks most glamorous with all the ornaments piled one upon the other, and this is something very unusual, and whenever we do something unusual, there is somebody to look askance at it, and somebody may be bold enough to inquire about it. Why are you doing like this? This is something unusual, this is something absurd, so this is something unexpected, and therefore he says, you please tell me, Vada. So this is also a beautiful way of converting the other fellow into our opinion. So now and then you must ask the fellow, you please tell me whether this is right. So what do you think? So and so on. So that is to say, have you been guided or rather misguided by somebody to take this recourse into such things as these, or is it upon your own thinking? So you please tell me, so I don't have to make my judgments and pass my remarks. So please think over. So often they appeal to you, think for yourself and so on. So such kinds of arguments are usually presented when people try to brainwash others, and therefore the brahmacharya is asking her, Vada, tell me whether this can happen. So what is the situation, what is the example that he is giving? To understand some of these examples, one must be really indeed initiated into the Sanskritic kind of thinking that was very common till recently, till we have had the impact of the West. Now today what is given as an upamana needs to be explained, because generally upamana is given as something which is utterly simple and most easily grasped. So the one lakshana of the upamana is always its prasiddhi. So only the prasiddha thing that can be given as upamana. So today we are totally impervious to these things and oblivious of the very many beauties that our poets typically and frequently point out. So you tell me, Vada, Pradoshe, at the evening hour. So there is when the sun has set and the darkness has just begun, when the night has just started. Sputa Chandra Taraka, already the stars and the moon have now just appeared. So they have become Sputa. Earlier, as long as the sun was there, even though the stars were there, they remained asputa. And even as the sun sets, they gradually become more and more manifest sputa. So Sputa Chandra Taraka Vibhavari, the night time. Yadyarunaya Kalpate. Now, can it be ready for the sun to dawn? The sun is only just now set, and suppose the night time, the night hour, longs for sunrise immediately. Now, how can that be possible? It has to happen as a matter of the course of time, and therefore it's only at the morning hour, the early hour of dawn, that you can expect the sun to arise. So Aruna can here be taken as the sun himself, or to the red color that appears before the appearance of the sun. So first appears Aruna and then appears Surya. Aruna is taken as the charioteer of the sun, and the reddish brown color that appears so before the arrival of the sun is Aruna. Now the bark garment that Parvati is wearing is roughly of that color, and therefore she says Vibhavari. So can it long for the Aruna when it is the case that the stars and the moon have only just begun to manifest themselves upon the disappearance of the sun? So that is to say, such kind of rigorous tapas as Parvati is involved involving herself in is something that is befitting in a fairly older age, and she cannot advance age like that, and therefore there is no question of such kind of an immature and inopportune preponement of the hour of dawn when it is only now that the sun has set, and therefore the night time is looking very attractive on account of the various stars which are all twinkling and look bright and so on, and even so on the person of Parvati the various ornaments would be shining and looking bright and so on, and the if a person has ornaments of diamond, one can see that they resemble the tarakas or the stars which can also shine and twinkle, and therefore how is it compatible to be taking recourse to tapas at this age of yours when you are just stepped into youth? It's as absurd as the night, so longing for the Arunodaya when it has just commenced.
किमित्यपास्याभरणानि यौवने धृतं त्वया वार्धकशोभिवल्कलम् किमिति आभरणान्यपास्य वार्धकशोभिवल्कलम् यौवने त्वया धृतं प्रदोषे वद प्रदोषे स्फुटचन्द्रतारका विभावरी यद्यरुणाय कल्पते प्रदोषे स्फुटचन्द्रतारका विभावरी अरुणाय कल्पते यदि वद यद्यरुणाय कल्पते.
The Brahmacharin speaks of other possibilities of the fruit of penance. So Shloka 45, Divam yadi prarthayase vrithashrama. If you are seeking for Swarga, so then your efforts are in vain. Divam yadi prarthayase vrithashrama. Your efforts are in vain. Why? Because the Himalayan region itself is famous as the region of the divinities. Pituh pradeshas tava deva bhumayaha tava pituhu pradeshaha. Your father's regions, the Himalayan regions, are known as deva bhumis. So the Himalaya is the tapo bhumi and the deva bhumi. Atha upayantaram. Now he is coming to the right point. So in Sanskrit, the word upayantru means the person who marries, the husband. So atha upayantaram, that is to say, atha upayantaram prarthayase. If it is the case that you are seeking a husband, alam samadhina, enough of this samadhi of yours, enough of this tapas. Why? He once again gives an argument via an illustration. Na ratna manvishyati mrigyate hitat. Nowhere do we see any gem going after people to possess it. On the other hand, people go in search of gems to possess the gem, and therefore na ratnam anvishyati. So it's not a gem that goes in search of an owner. Mrigyate hitat. So tad ratnam mrigyate. It is the ratna that is sought after. It is people who go after the ratna, and therefore there can be no question of your requiring a husband. So it is why you are performing tapas, and therefore any tapas that you may think of in regard to getting a good husband, that I would say is utterly useless, vrithashramaha, because you are such a gem, and there should naturally be very many people who like to be suitors for your hand, and it is not the case that none has expressed his intention or made the proposal to marry you, and therefore you have to perform tapas so that you may get a worthy husband and so on. So that is simply vritha. So vritha shramaha. So your efforts are all really useless. And a good psychologist that Kalidasa is, and our Shiva, the Brahmacharin, is. So he says, well, I understand. Niveditam. So Nishvasitena soshmana manastume samshayameva gahate nadrishyate prarthayitavya evate bhavishyati prarthya durlabhah katam. Shloka 46. Your heart sigh itself reveals that this indeed is the question that is pestering you. Nishvasita is a sigh, and the sigh often shows itself as either cool when we are very happy that you have accomplished a tough and great task, so which has resulted in a very positive result. So we heave a long sigh after it has arrived after a great deal of struggle and hard work and so on. And when it is a matter of disappointment, the sigh will be hot, our breath will be hot. So the temperature of the breath is also an indication of the state of mind, and therefore soshmana nishvasitena, ushman is being hot. So soshmana nishvasitena, by your hot breath. So it has been communicated to me, niveditam. So he doesn't even say, I have come to know, I can guess or whatever. On the other hand, he says, your heart sighs have told me, have communicated to me that this is the situation, that you are after a person whom you want to marry or some such thing. But I still have my own doubts. Manastame samshayameva kahate. So nadrishyate prarthayitavya evate bhavishyati prarthita durlabhah katham. So he says, there can be, we do not see nadrishyate. One cannot see that there can be someone that you have to seek. Prarthayitavyaha. So then even that can be ruled out. So if only Parvati says yes, so how many people would there be to seek her hand? So it is, if anything, it is Parvati who must have blocked all such possibilities and options. And if you are after some particular person, how can that particular person reject you? Prarthita durlabhaha katham bhavishyati. So you seek and he says no. So you propose and he disposes. How can such a thing at all be possible? Katham bhavishyati. So it is simply impossible. And therefore, I do not see anyone whom we have to go after seeking him. So nadrishyate prarthayitavyaha eva. So prarthita durlabhaha katham bhavishyati. How can that person be? So you can see that he is a very good psychologist, and he is able to see how the very sigh of Parvati, which comes impulsively and unconsciously, because the Brahmacharin has touched a deep core of Parvati's heart, and therefore the sigh comes very naturally and very unconsciously, and that has given away what was in Parvati's mind, and therefore it is as though that has betrayed the intentions of the tapas of Parvati, the purpose of the tapas. And now he pursues this very line in the next verse, 47. Aho sthira kopi tavepsito yuva chiraya karnotparashunita angate upekshite yaha shlathalam vinirjataha kapoladeshe kalamagra pingalaha. I can't imagine how that young fellow must be, that youth must be. Yuva, aho, so what a wonder, how wondrous, how strange it should be that tava ipsitaha yuva, that young man whom you long for, kopi, I do not know who it is, whoever it is, how sthiraha, so how firm and hard-hearted and unchanging he must be. A hardy youth, sthiraha yuva, the one that has been sought after by you, tava ipsitaha, kopi, whosoever it is. Because how can he bear to see the kind of suffering that you are through. Yaha upekshate, who ignores. Yaha upekshate, who ignores your jataha, your matted hair, which are shlatha and lambinihi, which are slack, that is loose, hanging loose, and lambinihi, that is hanging. So they're hanging here and there. Kapola desha, on your cheeks. And how are those jatas? Kalamagra pingalaha. They are yellowish, pingala, like the tip of the paddy. So kalama agra pingalaha. So how can a person ignore that? So your Kapoladeshas are Karnotpala Shunyatam Gate. They are bereft of Shunyatam Gate, the Karnotpala, the lotus, the blue lotus that you would put on your ears. So as a bedecking. For so long you are deprived of that Chiraya Karnotpala Shunyatam. The day she assumed the ascetic attitude, she has disbanded all these ornamentations and bedeckings on her person and is leading an utterly simple life and has put on matted hair, and such matted hair are hanging loose and they are touching her cheeks, Kapola Deshe, and it all looks so pitiable that you, a person of superlative beauty, should be reduced to this condition, and yet that fellow's heart is not touched by your condition like this. It's extremely strange that there can be such a youth at all. So it's actually Shiva himself who is like that, and therefore he is blaming himself for that. So had that fellow been a man of taste, so if he had any sense of aesthetics, then he would himself have rushed to come to Parvati and said, well, I am ready to marry you. So, sorry for delaying so much, and so on. So how can this person, so he must surely be a hard-hearted person, and directly hinting that he is an unworthy person. 48. Munivrataistvam atimatra karshitam divakaraplushte bhushanaspadam shashankarekhamiva pashyato diva sachetasah kasya manona duiti. Whose mind would not melt, so whose mind would not be pained. Kasya manaha na duyate. Duyate means he is pained. So kasya manaha na duyate. Whose mind would not be undergoing pain, if only he is a man who has any sense. Sachetasaha. So if he is a man, a heart, so if he has a heart at all, then any person, be alone the person whom you are pursuing, so whose mind would not be pained upon seeing you in this condition. He must be a heartless youth, because how are you now? Munivrataihi atimatra karshitam. So you are extremely emaciated. Atimatra karshitam. You have become so krisha. So Parvati herself was like a creeper even earlier, and upon the pursuance of this tapas, so she has become now, on account of her abandoning food and all that, so she has naturally must be looking famished, and so grown very thin. Atimatra karshitam munivrataihi, on account of these ascetic woes. And divakara aplushta vibhushanaspadam, and the spots where she used to put on her ornaments, vibhushana aspada. Aspada is the spot. So the word spot itself is from the Sanskrit aspada. So vibhushana aspada, the spots on her person where she used to put on her ornaments, now she has removed them all, and as a consequence they are all now sunburnt. Divakara aplushta. So divakara is the sun, and aplushta, so plushadahe. So they are all sunburnt. So this the kind of sun tanning that easily appears on her person, so that is also very evident. And shashanka rekhamiva pashyato diva, and you look indeed like the digit of the moon during the daytime. So the moon shines during night time, that's fine, but as soon as the sun rises, the moon begins to look very dull. So many days you can see at the morning hour the digit of the moon. So if there are only one or two digits, say, then the moon is still visible even after the sun has arisen. So for some time we still see when the moon looks so dull and You are like Shashanka Rekham Iva Diva. So, looking at you, who looks like the Shashanka Rekha during the daytime, Shashanka Rekham Iva Pashyataha Diva Sachetasah Kasya Mano Na Duyate. So, whose mind would not be, pained at such a thing?
मुनिव्रतैस्त्वम् अतिमात्रकर्षिता मुनिव्रतैस्त्वामतिमात्रकर्षिता दिवाकराप्लुष्ट विभूषणास्पदां शशाङ्कलेखामिव पश्यतो दिवा सचेतसः कस्य मनो न दूयते मुनिव्रतैः अतिमात्रकर्षितां दिवाकराप्लुष्टविभूषणास्पदां शशाङ्कलेखां दिवा इव त्वां पश्यतः सचेतसः कस्य मनो न दूयते कस्य मनो न दूयते.
And he says, that fellow must be indeed very arrogant. Why me? I consider, I deem that fellow as Saubhagya Madena Vanchitam. So he is indeed duped by a pride of his handsomeness. Saubhagya is being very lucky and being very fortunate, and one who can impress his partners or his lovers or friends or whoever. So that is Saubhagya. Saubhagya Madena Vanchitam. He is duped by that. So Tava Priyam Yaschaturavalokinaha. So Tava Priyam means your lover. So whomever you are thinking of as your worthy husband. So I deem that fellow to be a haughty and proud man because he is not presenting himself before your eyes. Chaturavalokinaha karoti lakshyam chiram asya chakshushaha. Asya chakshushaha, in front of this eye of yours. So even though the singular is used, it refers to the pair of eyes of Parvati. Asya chakshushaha, in front of these eyes. So lakshyam karoti. So na karoti lakshyam. So not making an object of these eyes of yours. So atmiyam vaktram, his own face. He is not presenting his own face so as the object of your eyes. And for so long, chiram asya chakshushaha atmiyam vaktram lakshyam nakaroti. He is not making it the object. Lakshyam is object. He is not making it the object. He is not visible. He is not making himself, presenting himself before your eyes. So that tava priyam. And he gives a beautiful description of her own eyes. Asya chakshushaha, chakshushaha qualified by two adjectives, Chaturavalokinaha and Arala Pakshmanaha. So, how are the eyes? Even the eyelashes are so charming. So, Arala means curved. So, curved eyelashes, so beautiful they are. So, even just to see the beauty of her eyes, one would come and stand before her, right in front of her. And who is this fellow who should be so proud that he would afford to miss the beauty of your eyes with those charming curly eyelashes? Arala Pakshmanaha. And they are also Chaturavalokinaha, and their pretty glances. So sometimes women kill others with their very pretty glances, and therefore sometimes they are referred to as the arrows of Manmatha, and therefore so Chaturavalokinaha, with those charming glances of yours. So how can he consider himself not worthy of presenting himself before your eyes? So even after this amount of time. So chiram. So I wanted to finish Shloka 50 also. Okay, we'll take it up in the next session. So next Saturday. we will do some 10 more verses, we will go up to 60. So that way, in another 2 or 3 sessions, we will be finishing this 5th canto. Namaskar, everybody.